Okay, it looks like we are broadcasting live, so welcome everyone. This is the live Q&A chat with Sylvia Day today. So she does these chats about once a month. It's a great way for her to connect with the fans, answer your questions. So we'll be pulling some of your questions today. I want to let you know how to do that. Some of you have already submitted them ahead of time, which we're going to pull some of those. And then you can also use this camera button if you want to come on screen and ask Sylvia a live question with your video camera on your computer, or you can click the question button and submit a question that way. And then there's a third way, that chat to the side of the screen where everybody's chatting right now. You can go ahead and plug in questions there as well, and we'll pull them from there. So welcome everyone, and welcome Sylvia.
Hello, everybody.
So I guess we'll go ahead and get started and start grabbing some of these questions for you. Let's pull one here. So this is from Sheena. She says, I know most people will want to know about Gideon and Ava, but will you be writing more historical books as well?
Absolutely, yes. And I'm contracted to write more historical novels. So as soon as I get the time in my schedule, I will absolutely be writing more. I started out writing historical romance, and originally I had thought that is all I was going to write. And then as I moved along in my writing career and expanded as a writer, I realized that I had different stories to tell. Futuristics, paranormals, contemporaries. But historical romance was how I actually became a romance reader. I started with historical romance, and it's always been one of my deep abiding loves, and I absolutely intend to continue writing historical romance for the entirety of my career.
Excellent. And we'll keep on moving along. Drop that one down. Let's see. This is from Mabel. It says, is there a chance that you'll write more about Gideon and Ava or other characters after the Crossfire series? A prequel or a sequel? She says that she just doesn't want it to end after 5 books. She's totally cressessed.
Well, I know what that's like. I feel the same way. It's actually been an interesting process for me to move closer and closer to the end of the series, and and I feel depressed at times that I'm going to reach the end, and I'm kind of wondering what I'm going to do with myself. Gideon and Ava have been a part of my life for a few years now, so thinking about and not spending every day with them, and listening to Gideon kind of crack that whip and tell me to get to work. I don't know how I'm supposed to live with that kind of void. But on the other hand too, I absolutely think that when I get to the end, that it will feel concluded. It will feel as if there's been closure, and if that happens, that I mean, there's other books that I've written in over the course of a 10-year career where at the time I was writing them, I dreaded getting to the end. And yet when I did get to the end, I was like, this is absolutely where it's supposed to be, and they're where they need to be. And I felt really good about it. So, I expect that when I get to the end of Crossfire, it'll feel the same way, which is, hard at this point for me to imagine, as I said, but it's there. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't revisit them if it was something that really moved me, and I felt really inspired to do that. Then I would. At this time, I don't see that. I think we'll get to the end of the 5 books, and we'll be done. I also have a lot of series that are on hold that I need to get back to, and then future projects that I would like to work on. So I mean, that comes into play too. But I'm very lucky that I'm able to structure my writing and my career based on what I'm really inspired to write at that particular time. I'm not having to write something uh, because it's on deadline. I write something because I feel that I need to write it. So moving forward, that I continue to do that with my career, and Crossfire may play into that, but again, I'm not sure that I see it now.
Yes, I think everyone will be very sad to say goodbye to Gideon and Ava. Let's grab some more for you here. This is from Lauren. Said, when Gideon nudges you to write some more, especially in the early morning, is it because it's a convenient time or he's eager to share his and Ava's story at that very moment?
For me, honestly, I think it's just he wants to dominate the best part of my day. I'm most productive and awake and aware, first thing, all the way up until about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon are my prime, awareness times. I mean, once 2, 3 o'clock rolls around, I start winding down and starting to, move to things that require less brain power, little things on my to-do list that need to get done. So, for him, I think it's just that dominant personality of his. He's like, you're up, you're ready, you're not doing anything else. And before you start anything else, you need to work with me. So, I sit down and work with him. And it's a great way for me to start my day because, once I've spent 4, 5, 6 hours with him in the morning, the rest of my day is fabulous. And I end up going to sleep that night with a smile on my face, which I think any woman would if they spent 5 or 6 hours with Gideon every day. So, it works for me, but I think that's why for him, he's like, you know what, before you start anything else, I'm first, and I always come first.
Excellent. And go to the
Ah,
next one.
it is. No, I'm sorry. The question, of course, is how is the fifth Crossfire book going? And I had to laugh at that. And sorry, I kind of preempted Jennifer in reading the question there, but uh, yeah, it's going great. It's going. I'm having a great time with it. I'm having a great time with Gideon and Ava. There's been a lot of growth with them over the last book, which you guys haven't had a chance to see yet. But there's been a lot of growth with them, a lot of self-awareness, and an increasing amount of self-awareness. So when they're hitting stumbles, it's not, they're not doing a face plant when they hit a bump in the road. It's kind of they have to stumble a couple steps, but then they just keep right on going. So it's been a joy to watch them evolve that way, and to see them, start to tackle things together, and to see the things that were, really big fears for them as far as the direction of their relationship, and their concerns about whether they were going to be able to manage their triggers effectively together. I mean, those sorts of questions are being answered very quickly and decisively, and they feel much more confident and secure in their relationship. And it's been fun to watch that, and see them, and I kind of feel like a proud parent. It's like, yay, you guys, they've matured quite a bit, and it's been a joy.
So, this one up. What are you reading right now? It's from Cynthia.
Ah, I'm actually reading a paranormal romance right now, and both the hero and the heroine are werewolves, and it's been a lot of fun. I really can't talk about it because I'm judging it for a contest, so and we're not allowed as judges to talk about the books that we're reading, but that's I'm in a paranormal romance, and that's pretty typical for me. That if I'm working on a contemporary, I'll read something outside of my genre. So it's outside the genre that I'm writing. So it's fun, and eventually, once the contest period is over, I'll be able to talk about the books that I read during this time, and you'll see them pop up on my Goodreads feed, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, going here. This is from Ava. What's your biggest achievement as a writer and your biggest disappointment?
Wow. I mean, as far as the achievement, I mean, there are tangible things, award recognitions, that sort of thing. But for me, I think that the thing that really moved my career forward, and really helped me to feel confident as a writer was, the time when I realized that sometimes your ambition can get in the way of your creativity, and you need to step back and really take a look at the work and focus on the work. And as long as you're always focused on writing the best book that you can, and giving it as much time as possible, and not being rushed to turn something in just because there's a deadline for it, and really, saying it's not about when this book comes out, or when it's scheduled, or when it's contracted for, but is it the best book that it can be? Am I madly in love with it? When I turn it in, is it everything that I wanted it to be? Am I going to be able to look back at this book 3, 4, 5 years from now and say, I still love that book because it's absolutely, what it needed to be at the time that I was writing it. And it takes a certain level of career maturity to get to that point. And it also requires being a little bit fearless, because that, you take a big risk if you can't get something in at a particular time. And to be able to say that I'm working on something just because I love it, not because I'm required to write it. There's a lot of jeopardy that comes involved in doing it that way. But when I reached that point in my career where I realized that it's more about me, feeling very comfortable and confident with the work versus trying to look at all the external things, was a huge turning point for me. And I think that's probably my biggest achievement as a writer, is reaching that kind of internal peace with what I was doing. Um, Biggest disappointment, of course, is anytime I hear from a fan who's upset about whatever. It could be what was in the book, or whether a book came out at a particular time, or whether they're waiting for something. I mean, all of that. I always hate disappointing readers, and having them unhappy or upset about anything. I wish that it was possible to have a career where you could make everybody happy, and it's not. But it does. It's a huge disappointment for me. I feel as if I let readers down if they're upset about something. There's nothing I can do about it as far as the work, because of course when I turn the work in, it's everything that I needed it to be. And if a reader is unhappy with something, I really can't fix that or address it, nor do I feel that I have to. But it's always, as with anything, when you put something out there, especially in a creative job like writing is, it's a very personal experience, and you hate to put something that personal out there, and have somebody else have a negative experience with it. Sorry.
Definitely. We do actually have one of your readers who wants to come up on camera and ask you a question. So I will
Awesome.
jump her up here now. And this is Cassie. Let's see if her screen will connect. There she is. Can you hear us, Cassie?
Hi. How are you?
Don't know if we can hear her.
Yeah,
She
I
can
can
hear us.
see you, but I can't hear you. But you know what? You could type your question in the box, in the chat box on the side, and then we can answer it that way.
Yeah.
Yep, right there. And I think I see a little one in the background there.
Let me see if her mic is turned on.
4. Oh, okay.
Oh, well, while let's see. It's coming up. I don't see her
I
question.
love that little hand coming in. How cute is that?
Here we go. I think it's this one.
What advice would I give to a first-time author? Okay, so here it is. This is my number one piece of advice for someone. Write 3 novels before you move on to any other aspect of your career. And I know that sounds, like a lot, but really, finishing a book is extremely difficult. Starting the next book is even harder than that. And it's not until you complete your 3rd novel that you realize, one, that you can do it, that you can get to the end, because now you've done it 3 times. But 2, you can start the next book because you've started the next book twice. And there's a certain level of confidence and command that comes with that. The other part of that is you also get a feel for what your voice is, because it evolves as you start your career, and you reach a point, and I'm not sure where that point is, and I think it's probably different for every writer, but you reach a point where you identify what your voice is, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and those become your signature. That's the promise that you give to a reader when they pick up your book, that they're going to get a particular experience from reading your novels, because your voice and your style has cemented itself and will carry over into everything that you do. It takes about 3 books for that to happen. The other thing with that is, of course, when you contract a novel, the first thing, if you contract it with, say, a traditional publisher, or a digital first publisher, or any sort of third-party publisher, they're going to ask you, they rarely buy 1 novel, they're going to buy 1 or 2, and they're going to ask you to set the deadline for when you're going to turn the next book in. If you've only written 1 or 2 books, you really don't have a good idea of how long it takes you to complete a novel. And so you're going to guess. And your guess may not be where you're at. And of course, once you get the pressure on of a deadline and reader expectations and so on, and oh my God, is she not adorable? She is so cute. You're going to find that you're going to slow down. Those things will impact you and your decisions. You'll second guess things, and it will take you longer to complete a book than you thought it would. And that's a difficult process to one. You never want to have to turn in a book because the deadline's up and you're not completely happy with it. And two, you don't want to be late on the first time you're turning in a book to a publisher because that's what you contracted it for. So once you get to that third book stage, you're going to have not only a command of your voice and your style, but also of how long it takes you to write a book. And that will give you the platform that you need to move forward with your career. All right?
Excellent. Excellent advice. Thank you, Cassie. Sorry we couldn't hear you. So I'll go ahead and drop that down, and I'll let everyone else know. If you're joining us just now, there's a couple ways you can submit questions for Sylvia. So if you want to come on camera and ask a question live there and chat with her, you can use that camera button right there. Just click that. That lets me know that you want to come up and ask a question. You can submit a question using the question button, or you can type a question right here in the chat on the side of this video window, and we'll pull questions for Sylvia for the next 45 minutes or so. So let's keep going, and I'll grab another one for you here. This is from Stephanie. What is the name of the series takes Ava nickname Ace?
That is the In-Depth series by J.D. Robb. And that's where she picks that up. And if you haven't read that series or started that series, it's absolutely delightful. I love it very much. The character in that series, who has the nickname Ace, is Rourke. Rourke is probably one of the all-time great alpha males that you can read about in any romance novel. He's phenomenal. And that's that's where she gets it. And also, of course, if you're just starting the series, I think she's 43, 44, could be maybe 48 books into the series. So if you want to hop onto a series and have plenty of glomming reading to do, that's the one to do it. I mean, there's plenty of books in that series. They're all phenomenal. They're great. And that's J.D. Robb, which is the pseudonym for Nora Roberts.
Excellent. Let's go to the next one. This is from Kirsten. She said, Sylvia, can you share any more info on the Blacklist series?
Sure. I'm not sure what, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm not sure what more I can tell you about it. It's a 2-book series, and we're following a couple first when they meet each other in college. It's set in Manhattan, and so we follow their relationship, one from the first meet through the very first beginnings of this very passionate romance between them. And then circumstances happen, and they split apart. And then we get to revisit them a few years later when they're a bit older and a bit wiser and a bit scarred by the fact that they lost the person that was the love of their life. And we get to see them, reconnect and move forward with their relationship, later on. So, in a lot of books that we call reunion stories, we meet the couple and we learn kind of in flashback and through conversation that they used to date previously, something went wrong, and this is kind of their second chance. And we rarely get to see that early stage of their relationship, that point where they were making mistakes, due to either how young they were or just lack of experience, lack of maturity, lack of self-awareness, that sort of thing. So we're actually going to follow this couple through the first part of their relationship and then later on. So it's very angsty, but it's great. The heroine's name is Lily. The hero's name is Kane. So you'll get to meet them probably about this time next year.
Yeah, good to know. And everybody likes angsty, I think. Let's see, we'll pull some more. I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce that name right, but it says, Hi, Sylvia, I'm from Bulgaria. Here you have many fans. Do you plan to visit our small and beautiful country let me jump this up, in order to present your books?
I absolutely would. Yes. A lot of that, especially with international travel, it's much easier, domestically for me to tour and do things without the support of a publisher. It's much more difficult for me to do that internationally, where I don't know the language. I don't have connections with bookstores. It's, setting up all of that as far as travel arrangements, hotels, and then setting up the events with different booksellers and those things really requires the publisher to be, a huge participant in that. So most of my international travel is based on when the publisher contacts me and says, we would like to invite you to our country to go on tour. And then, I get there and I have, someone from the publisher who's with me to help me kind of navigate through the language and various the social customs that are going on, and then of course to make arrangements with the booksellers and make sure that I get to the bookstore on time and everything's set up. And so if my publishers in Bulgaria invite me to come out to Bulgaria, I would very happily go. It's very rare for me to receive an invitation and me not to make time in my schedule to go. The only times where I haven't been able to is if there's a conflict with something that's already existing on my schedule. And in those cases, we've usually just switched the dates around and I'm able to accommodate it. But there's really no place on earth that I wouldn't go to if the circumstances were right.
And still pulling some questions for you here. Let me grab this next. This is from KK. It said, what is Ava's ethnicity because of her blonde hair?
Ava is Latina. She is, yes. Yeah.
And let's see, still pulling some. Okay, this is from Kimberlyn, and she says, I'm not sure whether this is a spoiler question. You tell us. She says, is Deanna from the Crossfire novels the same Deanna from the Afterburn Aftershock novellas?
It is slightly a spoiler question because the answer for that is in Aftershock, which hasn't been released yet. So I would just say that if you read Aftershock, you will get the answer to that.
There you go. So yes, it was a spoiler. Let's pull the next one. It's from Mabel. She says, hello, Miss Day. Aside from work, do you have other book boyfriends, excluding the men from your books?
Oh, absolutely. Raphael from the Guild Hunter series by Nalini Singh is a huge book boyfriend of mine. I would love to play with his wings. uh, and I also love Charles from the Alpha and Omega series by Patricia Briggs. He is an enforcer. He's as deadly as Raphael is, and yet he has a very soft side for the women in his life. And that I typically, those are the heroes that I'm very attracted to. Um, Also, Simon Cross, which is from a book by Linda Howard. It was called Death Angel, I believe, and he's also an assassin who has a soft spot. So I think I have a bit of a weakness for men who are killers and and yet are still the anti-hero, I guess, is my favorite type of book boyfriend.
Now this question will also ties into another question that's coming up a lot that I know is maybe one of the most popular questions you've been getting lately is when will the next book come out? And then that leads also into this question from Chloe that says, since you're planning on putting Crossfire 4 and 5 out close together, do you already have a title for the 5th book?
I do personally, and I've presented it to the editor at the publishing house, and she loved it too. That said, she doesn't want to announce it or put it out there because she said that it may change based on how I feel when I finish the book. And so, at this point in time, I can't imagine that it will change, but, she's absolutely correct. I'm a very organic writer. I don't know where I'm going with the story until I get there. So it is possible that I'll get to the end because, of course, as you guys have probably noticed, the titles often uh, come out of the story itself. You'll see, one of the characters think about the other one in a particular way, and that will become the title. And so I may get to the end of the 5th book and find that there was a particular catchphrase or something that happened in there that would be more appropriate to be on the cover of the book than the title that I've picked. But right now I'm kind of hanging on to the one I've got because I really like it. But as soon as I can announce it, I will. And of course, um, as soon as Captivated by You hits stands, the title of that fifth book will be, in that last page of the novel as they've been in the previous book. So, by then we'll have it set.
And I think that, that's the burning question everyone still wants to know, and we're still waiting on that, and Sylvia will give you an update as soon as she has one. Um, let's see. Let's pull some more questions for you here. From Sheena, are you looking forward to the Edinburgh author event?
Yes,
Edinburgh.
absolutely. I'm very much looking forward to it. I expect it will be one a beautiful country that I think anybody would dream to go and visit, and two, I'm looking forward to meeting all the readers. I understand that it's difficult to move all of you guys to where I'm at, so I'm always happy to go where you're at so I can meet you. So in addition to seeing what's there in the city, I'm looking forward to spending time with readers and having a really good time.
And Stephanie says, in book 2, at the dinner before the concert, what did Arnaldo say to Gideon in Italian?
Well, here's the thing: if it's not revealed in the book, it's it's a spoiler to tell you what it is. But you'll see more of Arnaldo as we move forward in the series, because of course we're spending more time with Gideon and working with Gideon, and we see Gideon with a lot of his friends, and see more of his social life, definitely more of his business life. So you'll be seeing more of him, and you might get to see it as we move forward what it is that he said. Because of course it's a burning question in Ava's mind too.
Yes. And let's see, from Rosanna, how do you feel about how the fans have embraced Gideon Cross?
Oh, I love it. I'm as passionate about Gideon as it's possible to be. I'm madly in love with him. So I absolutely appreciate those who feel the same way, and it's uh, it's unusual. It's unique, really, in writing to have a character who connects so deeply with other people. You can't plan that. If we could do that with every book, obviously we would, but he's absolutely his own person, and very strong-willed, obviously very strong personality. And so I love that readers are as in love with him and as passionate about him as I am. I couldn't ask for anything more.
Yes, everyone does love Gideon. And from Barbara, how does your family handle you traveling so much?
It's hard. It's hard on them. It really is. My son is 14 and my daughter is 12, so they're still, well, they're not babies. They're still young, and I'm on the road about 6 months out of the year. Um, and that's a lot. On the other hand, too, it's something that we've discussed, and it's part of the overall kind of living by example. Experience of saying when you're passionate about something, when it's your life. I mean, if somebody were to ask me to define myself, I would say I'm a writer and I'm a mother. Those are the two most important things to me. I mean, that's what I am. So in order to really be a well-rounded person, to be a strong individual in and of yourself, I mean, you can't just be a component of something else. You have to follow your passions and do what you need to do to be healthy and happy and confident. And those are, for me, writing and what I do for a living is very much that for me. And so I dedicate myself to it, and the lesson to be learned from that, and my children have definitely picked up on that. We've discussed it many times, is that when you have a dream, you have to go for it, and you have to really dedicate yourself to it and go for it. So they understand, they're very supportive, and they know, I can't love them more than I do. They're absolutely the center of my life. So, and it's difficult for all of us when I'm gone that much, but it's not always as crazy and hectic. There's some years that are slower than others, and so there's a bit of a trade-off there.
Excellent, good question. Now we have some casting questions that are coming up about, who do you picture as these characters. So I'll put some of those on the screen. The first one is from KK, and she says, "What do you think about Amber Heard as Ava?"
I wouldn't have a problem with Amber at all. She's definitely got that edge to her, which I love. I haven't seen her really um, vulnerable, but I haven't watched a lot of her movies, so it's possible that I just haven't seen that side of her in the movies that I've seen. But I've definitely seen quite a few movies where with her where she's just seriously kick ass. So I think that would be a great quality of Ava's that she would be able to portray very well.
Yes, I agree. And this one is for Gideon, from Emily. What do you think as, and I always say his name wrong, Henry Cavill, as Gideon?
Yeah, I say it the same way. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to ask her, I guess. I think he'd be fabulous. I'm honestly he would be my top pick to play Gideon. I think he's phenomenal.
Yes. Another one I definitely agree with. And from Stephanie, Stephanie would like to know, can you tell us more about Ava's parents?
I'm not sure what more I can tell you. I don't like to reveal things outside of the books that you haven't seen. Of course, they were very young when they first met, and very definitely one of those uptown girl scenarios for those of you who are familiar with Billy Joel. She pulled up in her spiffy little, very expensive sports car and just knocked Victor for a loop, and they had a wild, mad, passionate relationship. And yeah, one thing I can't say is that we haven't fully seen the full extent of Monica's motivation for being who she is. There's and Ava doesn't know it. So and we start to see more of that as you move forward through the books. Some of the reasons why she's so focused on income and money, and she's not as shallow as she appears. So we'll definitely get to dig a little bit deeper with her. And of course, when Ava goes to San Diego with Carrie, she spends a lot of time with her dad. So we'll see more from Victor too. But theirs is kind of one of those tragic romances, and I wish that both of them were happier, but sometimes life doesn't work out the way we want it to, and that's definitely been the case for them.
And I want to take a moment again to jump in and remind those who are joining us or joined late, that there are several ways you can ask a question for Sylvia. So you can do that by pushing the camera button. If you want to come right up here, on camera and chat with Sylvia live, you can submit a question using the question button, or you can submit a question, right in the chat on the side of the screen. So we'll go ahead and keep pulling some questions here for her. Um, this is from Wendy. Will any of the books be from Gideon's point of view?
Now that I will say is a closely guarded secret. Yeah, again, if you haven't seen it revealed in a book, I don't want to tell you about it because that's a spoiler. It takes part of the fun away from it. Now, mind you, I have a mother who absolutely insists on reading the first chapter and then the last chapter and then everything else in the middle. She also has dessert before dinner. And she likes to look at Wikipedia and see what the plot of the movie is before she starts watching it. So I'm absolutely familiar with those who are totally happy with finding out things before they actually see them unfold. But I know there's also a lot of readers who just don't want the experience marred in any way. They don't want to read the snippets. They don't want to look at the snapshots. They want a completely pure, unadulterated experience when they sit down to it. So I very much avoid spoilers, so I really can't answer that question. I can say that we spend a lot more time with Gideon than we have, but that could be because Ava's spending a lot more time with him and we're seeing that, or it could be something else.
Keep everyone waiting on that one. This question is from Christy. What was it like to handle all the attention gained by the Crossfire series? I imagine it was a bit overwhelming, but you seem very humble and grounded.
Ah, well, it's on one hand, you really can't prepare for it. It doesn't typically happen for writers to have a series that, explodes in the way that Crossfire has. So there's really no way that you can prepare for it to that extent. But on the other hand, I've been writing for a long time. Um, I've worked with numerous publishers. I've been published internationally nearly as long as I've been published in the United States. So there were certain aspects of it that while it got bigger, it wasn't completely unfamiliar to me, which, helped me. And of course, I've been in the business long enough to see that careers they're like roller coasters. That, if you were to draw a chart of it, a career in writing does not just go straight up. It's huge ups and downs, and I was looking the other day at a list of books that won awards from a bookseller 10 years ago, and some of those writers are not even around today. But their books were the hugest things at that particular time, and that happens. I mean, that's just the way it is with this career. So I'm aware that there's going to be a time when it slows way down, and hopefully you stay in the business long enough for it to go back up again. As long as you're writing books that you're really happy with and you love, and you stay focused on the work, you can kind of weather those storms well. I'm glad. I thank God every day that I have been a writer for as long as I had been before Crossfire hit. I really can imagine having to experience that with no basis whatsoever, for with it being one of my first few books, which happens, quite a bit to people. It'll be the first series they ever wrote, and it's massive, and that's it's hard, trying to deal with that and learn from it, and I learned a lot previously, and that's been very helpful.
That's also great advice. We have a lot more writing questions for you, so I'll pull some of those here. This is from Madeline, and she says, "What would you recommend a new author to do to get word out for their first book in a series, or their first book series,
I
rather?"
would offer the book to reviewers, and if it connects with readers, they will be the best ambassadors you could ever have, for a book. So it's definitely NetGalley is a great way to get at least digital galleys of books out to bloggers and reviewers. But that nothing drives sales of a books like word of mouth does. So getting your books in as many hands as possible, and then allowing the readers to be the ones who sing its praises are the best way to go. There's really not a lot that you can do otherwise, say like an advertisement, that will impact sales the same way that good reviews will. So that would be my number one advice: is get your book in the hands of readers.
Excellent piece of advice. And this one also about writing is from Cynthia. So, did you get your start self-publishing on your own, or did you search out traditional publishers?
No, my first I didn't start self-publishing until about 5 years ago, I think, maybe. I'll have to look that up. I think it's about 5 years ago. But I sold my first book back in 2004 to a traditional publisher, and I worked with most of the major publishers in the United States. I have 12 domestic publishers. Uh, and some of those are digital first. Some of them are traditional publishers. Some of those are, big five. I started out as a traditionally published author. I moved into digital first publishing very quickly. Within 2005, I was releasing books digital first, which was unusual at the time, and I actually got a bit of flack from that. There were some other writers who were like, I don't understand. You're with a traditional publisher. Why would you go backwards and do digital first? Obviously, it was a great decision. um, but and then after I had done that for a few years, I mean, I started out originally self-publishing by having rights reverted to me from traditional publishers, and then I released the books with new covers and a better price point, lower price point on my own, and then moved from that into releasing new works through self-publishing. So I've been, I'm one of those who started out traditional, moved into self-publishing, and have remained hybrid ever since.
Um, Now going to Crossfire questions again because those are piling in. Um, this is from Kirsten. She says, now that the first excerpt was posted, will we be getting snapshots or snippets weekly like you did for Entwined with You?
I'm not sure about weekly, but definitely you'll be seeing more of them as we roll closer to when I anticipate the book will come out. And that's not being coy. I honestly, there is no date set, so it's not as if I'm just not telling you what it is. There isn't one. We revisited the conversation recently, and we were still not able to absolutely ensure that the release date would not change. And as I said, we're not going to put a date out there that's not absolutely solid and set in stone. But we're definitely moving closer to that point as I move closer to the end. And I'm happy to share the book with everyone. Of course, the publishers like to know when I'm going to release a snippet or excerpt so that they can promote that too. So there's some coordination going behind the scenes, which previously I didn't really have that. If the mood struck me to put an excerpt up, I'd go ahead and put it up. Now I have to kind of think about it in advance. It's less spontaneous for me. So again, I don't know that it'll be weekly, but definitely you're going to start seeing a lot more of them as we move closer.
All right, something to look forward to there. This is from Joanna, our next question. Do you know how many books will be in the Dangerous series?
Originally it was just planned to be the one story, all revved up. And then, I wanted to kind of revisit them, similar to the reason why I started writing the Crossfire series. They're about to, Faith and Miguel are about to go into therapy and try to address some of the issues. Again, that's a really great example of a story, kind of like what I was referring to when I talked about the Blacklist series earlier, where we're meeting this couple as they're coming back together, and we didn't see them in those early years when they were first dating each other, and I always felt like I wanted to follow a couple through that. So again, that's an example of a reunion story where we catch up with them and then kind of learn about the history through flashback. And I wrote this all revved up, planned on it being beginning, end, and done. And then the thoughts later on, as I thought about it, of them going into therapy together and trying to work out some of the issues that tore them apart in the first place. I find that fascinating. That whole the drive to change yourself to be a better person for the person that you're in love with. I mean, I don't think there's a greater expression of love that you can have than to want to be better for somebody else. So that's when I was like, I wanted to write another book, revisit them. So I because I wasn't planning on there being more than the first book, I can't say that I plan on there being any more than the second book. It would just have to depend on where I'm at, when I finish that, and where where they're at as couples and where I feel their relationship's going.
And we still have some more questions piling in. So start pulling those. This might be another spoiler. So they say that. Sorry if this is a spoiler question, but is Ava going to bond with Gideon's friends?
Yeah, well, it is a spoiler because we haven't seen that yet. But I can say, she's kind of on rocky ground with Arnaldo, and he's one of Gideon's really close friends. And not that I blame him. He wants what's best for Gideon, and he hasn't really seen uh, that Ava is that for Gideon. So, and that's an issue, of course, because Arnaldo is not just friends with Gideon, but he's part of a network of friends with Gideon, and his opinion, of course, carries weight. But the fact is we all know, Ava very much loves Gideon and wants the best for him, and wants to fight for him and take care of him, and that sort of thing. Sometimes you can change somebody else's perception of you just by proving them wrong. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. So she's not going to go into it clean because she's already messed up once and had somebody witness how badly she messed up. But she can, of course, always show that she's better than they think she is.
Let's see. So Stephanie asks, since this week is Valentine's Day, will we have some surprise for Valentine's Day? A preview, maybe?
There might be, of course, I'm going to be traveling on Valentine's Day. I have a signing in Boonesboro this weekend with Nora Roberts. We were just talking about her and her alter ego, JD Robb. She writes the In Depth series where Ava got the Ace nickname. So her and I will be signing together on Saturday, along with a lot of other really great authors, Jeanine Frost, J.C. Burton. I love both of those women, so it's going to be a great time. But I have traveled from where I'm at right now in Las Vegas to the East Coast on Valentine's Day. So, it depends on how well I can coordinate that or not. I mean, I do try to, as you guys have probably noticed over the last couple of years, I do like to put out snippets and excerpts on holidays. I think it's fun to do so. Um, so it could be a possibility. Of course, in the last week we've had the excerpt from Captivated by You. We've also had an excerpt from Aftershock. So we've kind of got a few excerpts floating around out there. I'm not sure if it's too soon to have another one or not, but if I can fit it in, I love to celebrate holidays with the little snippets and excerpts.
From Emily, will you be coming to Denver at all for any book signings?
I'm not scheduled to this year. I did receive an invitation a couple weeks ago to come out to Denver this year for a book signing, and it came in too late. I am already booked for that time period, and I'm not able to make it out there. I was out, I believe, in the Denver area last year, and the city I was in is escaping me, but yeah, I was in Colorado last year. Unfortunately, I'm not scheduled to be out there again this year. That doesn't mean that something might not come up in the latter half of the year. Typically, I'm booking things either 2 years in advance or 6 months in advance. There's rarely anything in between. So I won't say that it's not possible that I won't be out there this year, but right now I'm not scheduled to. And if not, I will likely be out there next year.
And I know that that's a very popular question. A lot of people want to know if they'll be able to see you at any events. Is there anywhere that they can look at your event schedule or know, where you're going to stop? Is that posted somewhere for them?
Sure. Yes, and I'll go ahead and post it in the chat box too.
There you go. So for all those questions, you can go to Sylvia's event page and then you'll be able to see if she's coming to a town near you, or if she'll be coming later. Let's see. Pull some more of these questions for you. This is from Mabel. Aside from Gideon, who is your favorite male character in your books?
That would probably be Wolfric from In the Flesh. He was my favorite for very many years, and even though I wrote books after him, he remained one of my favorite heroes. He's definitely an ultra alpha male. He's on the extreme, but his love for Katie is pretty intense. So there would be Wolfric, and then after him would be Alistair from 7 Years to Sin.
Answers. We have time for a few more, so let me grab some of these for you. Let's see. A lot of it is the next book coming out yet, and about the casting. So I know you talked a little bit about the casting. I just saw a casting question jump up again.
Well, I can say that I don't have any control over casting, that I'm not contractually involved in casting choices in any way. That said, I do work closely with the producers of the show, and they do want me to be happy with their choices, and they keep me very much in the loop, which has been lovely. My contribution to the series is not just the books, but I'm also an executive consultant, and I read through scripts as they become available, which at this time they have not. We do not have a script yet. And to make sure that the story follows along with what we've seen in the novels. And I think that's, really the most important thing that we can ask for is, of course, that's the Bible for a series. It's what everybody follows as far as, developing it and bringing it to life on the screen. Um, but the producers are big fans of the series, and they are very determined to maintain true to the ethnicity and sexual orientation of the characters. So I don't expect there to be much deviation from what you see, in your head when you read the books versus what you see on the page, except for perhaps ages. I think sometimes some readers lose sight of how young Gideon and Ava are. Gideon is 28, Ava is 24, and the characters, of course, will, the actors that portray the characters will look as if they are in their 20s, which, of course, the characters are. So some of the casting choices that I've seen put out there are people who definitely could not pass for somebody who's in their 20s. And then there's also, the thing that even if you're an older actor who looks younger, there's um there's a certain level of your soul that comes through in your eyes, a sense of being jaded or not jaded, and a sense of innocence or lack of experience, that really, once you've learned something, you can't unlearn it. So I do think it's important for the actors to portray the characters, to be as close in age to them as written as possible. But again, the producers will come up with their choices and we'll see what they are. But they're well aware of who the fan favorites are. They're well aware of who my favorites are, and so I expect great things.
And related to that, another big question here today is, do you know when people can see this series? When is it going to be released and televised?
When I sat down for lunch with the producers recently, we talked about that, and they said that they had their eye on spring of next year. So
All right,
that's when I expect that we'll have something concrete to show you.
there you go. And from Cassie, which one of the characters was the first one to speak to you, the one that made you want to write?
Well, the very first book that I wrote was Ask For It, which is a Georgian era historical which features Elizabeth and Marcus. And it was actually Elizabeth who came to me first. And she was so hurt over Marcus, and really heartbroken and confused. And her life was, in a very, it was in a state of upheaval, and I loved her, and she really didn't give me a choice as far as telling her story, but I sat down and started writing that. And of course, I fell in love with Marcus right away and was like, "What is the matter with you, girl? How do you have problems with this guy? He's phenomenal." But she was actually, and that kind of goes back to when I was talking about writing and writing different stories. I realized as I was writing that first book that I'm very drawn to heroines who are, very flawed, and definitely it's rarely the tortured hero with me. It's often the tortured heroine, and we really saw that with her. So she was the first one, and that book, Ask For It, was the first novel that I wrote. It was not the first one of my novels to be released, but it was the first one I wrote, and I followed that up with In the Flesh, which is when I realized, okay, I thought I was going to write historical romance my whole career, and now I'm writing futuristic. So that was part of my process of learning what type of stories I wanted to write too.
Excellent. And more on writing. This is from Crossfire Quotes. Do you work with an outline or do you just write?
I just write. I cannot outline at all. Because for me, outlining for me, and it's different for every writer. I have a friend of mine who does storyboards, and she has this huge board where every single chapter and every scene in a chapter has its own little post-it note where she writes down what's going to happen there. She plots out the entire book before she gets started, and then she sits down and writes it. For me, I can't do that because it's author intrusion for me. That means I'm trying to establish a framework for a story that's not mine. It's the character's story. And when I sit down to start writing it, they'll go in entirely different directions that I didn't foresee coming at all. and I'm hugely shocked by things that happen. So there's really no way for me to know. And there are some days, I try to end my writing day at a point where I still know what I need to write the next day. Because if I write all the way through to the point where, I've seen everything, sometimes I could sit down the next day and go, there's nothing there. I need to write and there's nothing there. So as long as I start out the day, picking up from where I didn't quite finish the day before, it rolls into it. Or else, sometimes a couple days will go by and then, Gideon will kind of start, yeah, getting very dominant in my head about what he wants and what he sees happening and where he wants things to go. And then I'll be like, all right, I get it, and I'll sit down and I'll start writing again. But it's all very organic for me. It's really, again, I don't know where I'm going until I get there.
Well, I have time for one more, so let me see if I can post them for you. Um, let's see, this is from Mabel. I've read the 3 books from the Crossfire series a lot of times. Is there a book that you've reread just because you loved it so much?
Absolutely, absolutely. All of my keeper books are books that I read over and over and over again. And every time I read them, I get something new out of it. I get a whole new experience out of it. And then there are some of my keeper books where there are just scenes or lines of dialogue that just hit me in such a way that, I'll reread that over and over again as I'm reading the book the first time. And then later on, sometimes just to, if I want something to pick me up or something to make me cry, or I'll go to a particular section of the book that I know I love. And in those cases, I'm a Kindle reader. Everything is on a Kindle, but when I really love a book, I have to have the hardcover of the book. And by that, I don't mean just the hardback books, but also the paperbacks. Right, I have to just have a physical copy of the book here on my shelf so that it's very easy for me to just flip it open and get to a particular passage and read it. I also have a lot of series that I follow where the books only come out once a year. Some of them come out once every year and a half. And so whenever I have a new book coming out in the series that I'm following, I will, go back and read from the beginning. And that way it's all fresh and new in my mind when I pick up the next book and I roll right into it. So I do a lot of rereading.
Excellent. So I think with that, we're about at our time to wrap up here. So I know we got a lot of questions in today, so hopefully we were able to answer all of those burning questions you have for Sylvia. She does do these chats once a month to connect with fans, answer your questions. So if we didn't answer your question today, then or if you have new questions, join us again at next month, and she will answer those questions then. So thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you to Sylvia for having this chat again today.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. It was great talking to you. I look forward to talking to you next month, too.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.